I refused to be a lifelong caretaker for my disabled brother, and now my family has declared war on me. They just sent me a bill for 10 years of help. My name is James. I'm 27. And literally 2 weeks ago, my mother, Sarah, sent me a text. One of those that looks like a regular notification, but when you open it, you realize it's the point of no return. She didn't write, "How are you, son?" or "Come over for dinner." She just sent a scanned document and a short phrase. "This is what you owe us, for our whole family." I was sitting in my office in downtown Philadelphia. I had a decent job that I'd fought tooth and nail for, and I had just closed a major project. I thought I'd grab a beer and relax that evening. But when I saw that file, it felt like a concrete slab had dropped onto my chest. It was, as they called it, a calculation of compensation for abandonment of care duties for a brother. The sum was insane. 6 figures. It factored in absolutely everything. My mother's lost career, emotional damages to my parents, and the most cynical part, under-received assistance from me over the last 8 years. My younger brother, Ethan, is 19. He's a really cool guy. Smart, he has golden hands, he can assemble and disassemble anything. But when he was 9, he was in an accident that completely changed our family's life. A severe spinal cord injury. He's now in a wheelchair and needs constant assistance. With daily life, with moving around. Let me be clear, I love him. I love him without any buts. My problem is not Ethan, but my family, who at one point decided that I, as the elder son, automatically became their backup plan, or more accurately, their free labor. I was 17 when it happened. At first, I helped because he's my brother, and it was a shock for everyone. I tutored him in the hospital, then at home. Drove him to treatments. I was his legs and hands. Back then, it didn't seem out of the ordinary. Everyone, especially my parents, insisted, "It's temporary. We'll get through this. You're the older brother, our rock." I believed them. I was a teenager who just wanted to be a good son. But the temporary stretched into a decade. I didn't go to parties, I didn't play sports. My world narrowed down to school, home, Ethan, treatments, helping with chores. I became the assistant. Understand, I wasn't just helping my parents. I was replacing them while they tried to cope with their grief and financial issues. When it came time to choose a college, I applied to schools in New York. My parents found out when I received the acceptance letter. That's when I first saw real fury in my father, David's eyes. "You're going to abandon us? Right now, when we need you the most. You're going to abandon your brother?" He yelled. "I'm not abandoning him. I'm going to university. I'll come home." I tried to explain. "You must stay. Go to a local college. It'll be close. We need you here." My mother said this not as a plea, but as an ultimatum. Their argument was simple and non-negotiable. "You are selfish. We didn't expect this from you. You owe your family." Owed them for what? For being born? For not being in that accident? I didn't understand. I left. It was the hardest decision of my life. I felt like a traitor, but I knew that if I stayed, I would simply die there. My life would end, and it would only make things easier for them. For the last 8 years, I've lived with this guilt, but I built my life. I called Ethan, sent money, visited. I always did something to compensate for my leaving, but they never forgave me. Every phone call, every one of my visits, it was a quiet, yet persistent, reproach. And 2 weeks ago, it stopped being quiet. It became a bill. I called my mother to understand what this madness was. "Mom, what is this document?" My voice was shaking. "This is what you owe us, James. We calculated how much it would cost to hire a person to do what you were supposed to do. You chose your own life. Now pay for our right to choose." Her voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. "This is extortion. You can't demand this." "We can, because you betrayed us. Do you think you're the only one who has a right to a life? We had plans, we had careers. Now you will pay. You have a month to figure out how you're going to repay this money." I hung up. My breathing was ragged. I felt nothing but pure, animalistic rage and a sort of icy terror. The amount was real, and the threat was real. They weren't bluffing. They were ready to destroy my life to prove their point. This was a war, and I had just received the declaration of war. I thought about Ethan. What does he think about all this? And why is this happening right now? Why? Only one thought flashed through my head. I won't give them a single cent. But how do you do that when they are your family? The first 48 hours after I got that six-figure invoice from my parents, I honestly didn't sleep. My apartment in Philly suddenly felt like a cage. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped, half expecting a legal notice, half hoping it was Ethan just wanting to chat about the latest Rockets game. But it was never Ethan. I tried to talk to them, tried to appeal to some vestige of parental love or simple sanity. I called Dad, David. My father is usually the stoic, quiet type, the one who lets my mother, Sarah, handle the dramatics. But this time he took the call, and his voice was dead cold. "James, we've made our position clear," he said, the kind of monotone you use when talking about a utility bill. "This isn't about love or emotions. This is about accountability. You made a choice that had a direct, measurable financial and emotional impact on your mother and me. We calculated the cost of that impact. It's fair." "Fair? Dad, I worked 3 jobs through college to pay my own way. I never asked you for a dime. I sent money back home every month, even when I was eating instant ramen. How can you call this fair? This is emotional blackmail disguised as a lawsuit." There was a long pause, the kind that lets the silence fill with all the unspoken resentment from the past decade. "It's the cost of your freedom, James. You bought your independence at our expense. You should have been here. You signed up for this when you became the older brother. We trusted you, and you abandoned Ethan." That phrase, "you abandoned Ethan," it always hit the hardest. It's the core of their argument, the moral weapon they swing with perfect aim. I couldn't argue with it because, on some level, my 19-year-old self did feel like he was betraying his little brother by choosing to live. I hung up, shaking. Talking to them was useless. It wasn't about the money. It was about control, about punishing me for escaping the role they had cast me in, the perpetual unpaid caretaker. The whole thing accelerated fast. It was less than a week later when I got the email. It wasn't from Mom or Dad. It was from a law firm, a small local firm, which told me they were serious but also trying to keep it in the family. Or at least cheap. The email was formal and stiff, confirming the debt and requesting a payment schedule within 30 days. My month-long ultimatum. I went to see a lawyer friend, Mark. He looked at the document, chuckled nervously, and then his expression froze. "Dude, this is rough. It's completely unprecedented. They've framed it as compensation for lost services and emotional distress stemming from financial loss. It wouldn't hold up in court, probably not on those grounds. But they've got a mountain of documentation here. Every single missed appointment, every doctor's note, every canceled family dinner since you left for New York. They have meticulously tracked your absence." That detail floored me. They hadn't just been resentful. They had been preparing. For 8 years, they'd been collecting evidence against their own son. It was chilling. "So what do I do, Mark? Countersue for emotional distress?" "No, James. That's a messy family court nightmare. We need to focus on 2 things, proving you never entered a legally binding agreement to be his caretaker, and more importantly, finding out what the hell triggered this now." He was right. Why now? After 8 years of simmering resentment, why the sudden, full-blown legal assault? The next day, I drove the 3 hours back to my hometown in New Jersey. I didn't tell my parents. I went straight to the only person who might give me an honest answer. Ethan. I found him in the garage. He was working on an old motorcycle engine, something he loved to do. He uses specialized tools, and his focus is intense. He didn't even hear me roll up until I knocked on the open door. "James? What are you doing here?" He sounded genuinely surprised, maybe even a little scared. "I was just in the area." I lied smoothly, walking over. The room smelled of grease and old metal. "How are you doing, man? How's the engine coming along?" We talked for 20 minutes about the engine, about college applications. He's looking into remote engineering programs. He was the Ethan I remembered. Witty, smart, and constantly trying to push past his physical limitations. Everything felt normal, until I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. A deep-seated anxiety, something he was hiding. I got straight to the point. Ethan, Mom sent me a bill. A massive one. It's about me abandoning you. You know about it, right? He dropped the wrench he was holding. The clang echoed in the silence. His face went pale. He wouldn't meet my eyes. It's Mom and Dad's business, James, he mumbled, starting to fidget with the wheel of his chair. I don't really know the details. Bullshit, Ethan. You know everything. Did they talk to you about this? Did they tell you they were going to sue me for this insane amount of money? I kept my voice low, but the intensity was there. I needed him to trust me, but I also needed the truth. He finally looked up, and his eyes were full of a mix of guilt and terror. He opened his mouth as if to confess, but then he quickly closed it, glancing nervously toward the house, which was about 50 feet away. James, you need to leave. Please, they'll be home soon. We can talk later. Just go. The panic in his voice was real. Something big was happening. Something that terrified my brother more than my parents' manufactured legal case. I realized this whole lawsuit wasn't the real reason. It was a distraction. A cover. My parents were trying to push me away hard and fast to prevent me from seeing whatever was happening in that house. The knot in my stomach tightened. I knew then this was about much more than a debt. It was about protecting Ethan. I left, but I didn't go far. I had to know what they were hiding. I had only 3 more weeks before the ultimatum expired. The drive back to Philly felt like I was running from a ghost. Ethan's fear, that look of pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes, was more damning than any 6-figure invoice. My parents, Sarah and David, weren't just demanding money. They were guarding something, and Ethan was trapped right in the middle of it. That was a Tuesday. By Friday, the low-level legal harassment had escalated into a full-on campaign. They started sending texts to my extended family. My aunt, my uncle, even a few cousins I hadn't spoken to since graduation. The messages weren't asking them for money. They were meticulously crafted character assassination texts. James has abandoned his responsibilities. He refuses to acknowledge the sacrifices we made for Ethan. He is legally indebted to us and is trying to ruin his brother's future. The phone calls started immediately. Aunt Linda called, her voice dripping with the pity and judgment I'd spent a decade trying to outrun. James, honey, what are you doing to your mother? She's devastated. You know how much she sacrificed. Just pay them something, make it right. Family is everything. Aunt Linda, I send them money every month. I pay for Ethan's specialized computer equipment. This isn't about money, it's about control. They're trying to destroy me because I didn't stay home and become their perpetual servant. I snapped, my calm finally shattering. She didn't hear me. She heard the accusation against my mother, and that was enough. They raised you, James. They suffered. You have an obligation. That night, I felt the walls closing in. The isolation was brutal. They had successfully weaponized the concept of family loyalty against me, painting me as the cold-hearted, materialistic son who had abandoned his disabled brother. Suddenly, I wasn't just fighting my parents. I was fighting the entire self-righteous extended family narrative they had built. I called my lawyer, Mark. Mark, we have to do something now. They're launching a smear campaign. They're poisoning the well. This confirms my suspicion, James, Mark said, sounding grim. They're trying to force a settlement out of court using public pressure. We need to go on the offensive. You need to send a clear, unequivocal message back. We'll draft a formal letter stating that you vehemently deny the legitimacy of the debt, that you have consistently provided financial support, and that you view their actions as malicious harassment designed to coerce money from you. It needs to be professional but brutal. I agreed, but I knew the real fight wasn't in the courtroom. It was in that house with Ethan. The next day, I drove back. This time, I didn't go to the garage. I walked straight up to the front door, unlocked it with my old key, and walked in. It was a Saturday morning, and I knew Dad would be watching the news, and Mom would be on the phone, probably coordinating the next wave of emotional attacks. I found them in the living room. The TV was on, and Mom was indeed on the phone, but she froze when she saw me. The phone dropped onto the couch with a dull thud. "James, what are you doing here? You should have called," she hissed, standing up like a cobra ready to strike. "I'm here to talk about your little invoice." "Mom," I said, walking closer. I kept my voice steady, but there was a tremor of controlled rage underneath it. "And about Ethan. What is going on in this house?" Dad, David, stood up slowly, positioning himself between me and my mother. He looked tired, older than his 50-something years, but his eyes were hard. "You have 30 days, James. We told you our terms. You don't get to march in here and interrogate us," David said, his voice flat and authoritative. "I get to do whatever I want. I am paying for Ethan's life support, his specialist gear, and I have the right to know what my family is doing to him." He was terrified when I saw him. "What are you hiding?" My mother's face twisted into an expression of pure, wounded indignation. "Hiding? We are trying to protect him from the stress of knowing his own brother doesn't care enough to honor his commitments. We are trying to keep his life stable." "Stable? By suing me? By making him feel like a burden that comes with a price tag?" I shot back. "I know he knows about the lawsuit. It's tearing him up. This is doing more damage than you realize." Suddenly, the front door opened, and Ethan rolled in from his morning therapy appointment. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. Me standing opposite my parents, the tension thick enough to choke on. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, his voice small and weak. My mother immediately abandoned her fortress mentality and rushed to his side, her voice softening into that manipulative, sickly sweet tone she always used with him. "Nothing, sweetie. Just talking to James about his career. He's leaving now." "No, I'm not leaving, Ethan." I cut in, stepping past my father. I looked directly at my brother, ignoring the furious stares of my parents. "They're suing me, buddy. They want 6 figures for the years I wasn't here. And I want to know why this is happening now." The room went silent. Ethan looked at me, then at my parents, then back at me. I could see the internal struggle, loyalty versus truth. He took a deep, shaky breath, and just as he opened his mouth, my father exploded. "Get out, James. You are no longer welcome in this house. We will file the papers Monday morning if you do not leave right now. You are a disgrace." It was a full-blown, hysterical roar. My father, the stoic one, had completely lost it. But I noticed something crucial in his outburst. The sheer desperation in his eyes, the terror of me staying, of me digging deeper. He wasn't just mad. He was desperate to protect whatever secret they were keeping. I took one last look at Ethan, who was now clutching his hands tight, his head down, tears starting to form. I had to leave, not because of my father's threat, but because my presence was causing my brother immense distress. As I walked out, I heard my mother whispering furiously to my father, something I couldn't quite catch. But then, as I reached the car, I heard the lock on the front door click. And then, from the house, I heard a new sound. A sound that didn't belong to my parents or Ethan. It was a cough. A deep, wet, male cough. The sound of a stranger. My heart hammered against my ribs. Who the hell was that? This wasn't just about money or guilt anymore. This was a cover-up. And I only had 2 weeks left. The cough. That deep, unfamiliar, male cough echoing from inside the house as I got into my car. That was the new, heavy piece of the puzzle. It wasn't the sound of a sick uncle or a visiting friend. It was the sound of someone who was there, who shouldn't have been, and whose presence they were actively hiding. My parents, Sarah and David, weren't just running a guilt operation. They were running a tight security detail on their lives. I drove back to my lawyer, Mark's, office in Philadelphia that Sunday night, my mind racing. The deadline was a week and a half away. "Mark, forget the legal defense for a second. I think they have someone living there. A man." I heard him cough. "They locked the door right after I left, and Ethan was terrified." I told him, pacing his small office. Mark rubbed his temples. "James, you're talking about a civil suit for debt. Your feeling that they have a secret tenant doesn't really help the case. Unless what? Unless that person is the actual caretaker, the one they are demanding compensation for. Or, and this is a big leap, unless their entire financial situation has suddenly changed, and they need that six-figure sum for a reason they're desperate to hide. That clicked. It wasn't about punishing me for 8 years of absence. It was about funding a new, immediate need. The timeline, the sudden, aggressive demand after 8 years of silent simmering. It all pointed to a current crisis. The next day, I didn't waste time arguing with lawyers. I drove back to my hometown, but I didn't go near the house. I needed to see what was going on without triggering the parental defense system. I parked my car half a mile away and walked to the nearest coffee shop, a little place called the Daily Grind where the local gossip flowed freely. I sat there for 4 hours, nursing a single bitter coffee. I overheard nothing helpful, just the usual small-town chatter. I was about to leave when I saw a familiar car pull into the parking lot. My mother's sedan. Sarah got out, looking tired but determined. She walked straight past the front counter to a small, reserved table in the back where a man was already sitting. He was in his early 40s, well-built, with a serious, almost military haircut. I didn't recognize him, which was odd for a small town. I immediately grabbed my phone, pretending to be engrossed in a call, and moved closer. Their voices were low, but I caught snippets. The payment for this month is short. James is fighting us on the whole amount. We need that money, Rick. The new adjustments cost a fortune. We can't let Ethan find out about this. Rick, the man she was meeting, the one who coughed, the one who was clearly involved in some financial arrangement they were hiding. I realized he wasn't just a tenant. He was the reason for the invoice. My mother pulled out a thick envelope and slid it across the table. That's everything we could pull together. The rest has to come from James's settlement. Sarah, I told you, I need the full amount by the end of the month, Rick said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. The medical supply company doesn't care about your family drama. If we don't pay for the robo-assist system installment, they'll repossess it. You know what that means for Ethan? My heart stopped. Robo-assist. I knew what that was. It's an insane, cutting-edge robotic exoskeleton system that allows people with severe spinal cord injuries a degree of independent movement, standing, and even walking. It costs a fortune, exactly the kind of six-figure fortune they were demanding from me. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. It wasn't about hiring a replacement caretaker. It was about buying one, a robotic one, for my brother. They hadn't told me about the system because they knew I would try to help, but they wanted to control the narrative, and more importantly, they wanted to control the money. They wanted to seize my entire savings to fund this monumental purchase, framing it as compensation, to bypass any legal transparency. This introduced a crushing moral dilemma. My parents were manipulating me, lying to me, and weaponizing my guilt against me. They were trying to financially ruin me and alienate me from my family. But they were doing it to give Ethan the chance to walk again, or at least stand up, something he hadn't done since he was 9. If I paid the debt, I would lose everything, validating their toxic, controlling behavior and setting a precedent for future financial abuse. If I didn't pay, they would lose the funding for the final installment of the robo-assist, and Ethan would lose his chance at independence. I had to find out how far along the process was. I couldn't just stand there, so I walked straight up to their table. "Hi, Mom." "Rick," I said, my voice dangerously calm. They both froze, eyes wide with shock. My mother looked like she was about to faint. Rick, however, just slowly stood up. "James, what are you doing? Get out of here." My mother shrieked, stuffing the envelope and the papers back into her purse. "No, I'm not leaving. I know what the money is for, Mom. The robo-assist," I stated, my eyes locked onto Rick. "And I know you're trying to extort me to pay for it." Rick stepped forward, his expression hardening. "Your parents are desperate, James. They sold the vacation cabin to cover the down payment. They don't have anything left. This is their only shot. It's either your money or your brother stays in that chair forever." He had just dropped the final, devastating piece of information. They hadn't just sued me. They had bet everything. They sold their own future, the cabin where we spent every summer, the one place I still held happy memories, to start this project. And now they were stuck. I was faced with a choice that would define the rest of my life. Preserve my financial future and integrity, or sacrifice it all to give my brother the gift of movement, knowing full well I was rewarding my parents' disgusting manipulation. I had only days left. The weight of that decision was crushing, and I knew the final confrontation would happen in the next 48 hours. The revelation in that coffee shop, the robo-assist, the sale of the cabin, the sheer, panicked desperation of my parents. It had stripped away the legal maneuvering and laid bare the raw, terrible truth. They weren't just greedy. They were drowning, and they saw me as their only lifeboat, a lifeboat they intended to commandeer by force and deceit. I left the coffee shop without another word. Sarah's frantic pleas and Rick's cold, utilitarian assessment faded into a blur. I drove for hours, looping the familiar streets of my old neighborhood, feeling the full, crushing weight of the moral dilemma. My self-respect and financial freedom versus Ethan's potential to walk. I spent the next 24 hours in a haze, barely responding to Mark's urgent texts about filing a restraining order. The ultimatum was now less than a week away. The final confrontation happened the next evening. I didn't call. I didn't text. I showed up at the house, the same way I had when I was a kid, slamming the screen door behind me. I found Ethan in his room. He was sitting by the window, sketching. The air was thick with unspoken tension. "James," he whispered, startled. "I know about the robo-assist, Ethan," I said, my voice low and steady. I didn't want the performance for my parents. I needed the truth from him. "I know Mom and Dad sold the cabin, and I know they're trying to use that ridiculous lawsuit to fund the final payment." He looked down at his lap, tracing the lines on his jeans. A single, silent tear tracked down his cheek. "I told them not to. I told them I don't need it that much, that it wasn't worth all this." "Did you know they were suing me?" I asked the core question. He nodded, a jerky, miserable motion. "They said it was the only way. They said you had so much money, and they framed it as something I deserved after everything. They made it sound like I was selfish for not taking it. And they said if I said anything, you wouldn't come home anymore." My heart twisted. They had poisoned his mind, used his desire for normalcy as leverage against both of us. The true betrayal wasn't their lawsuit against me. It was their manipulation of Ethan. "What do you want, buddy?" I crouched down, meeting his eyes. "Do you want the machine?" He hesitated. "I want to be able to make myself a sandwich without help, James. I want to look someone in the eye when I talk to them. I want to walk out to the garage and work on my engine without feeling like I'm dragging everyone down." He paused, his voice cracking. "But I don't want it if it costs you everything. I don't want to be the reason you hate them even more." That was the turning point. The decision wasn't about me or them anymore. It was about protecting Ethan from the fallout. I walked out of his room, found my parents in the kitchen, and placed a folded piece of paper on the counter. "I'm paying it," I announced. "I'm paying the full six-figure amount you demanded. You can tell your lawyer to draft the settlement agreement tomorrow." My mother gasped, dropping the mug she was holding. David simply stared, a flicker of cold, hard relief in his eyes. "But this isn't compensation," I continued, my voice cutting through the sudden silence. "This is a one-time, non-refundable gift to Ethan, specifically earmarked for the completion of the robo-assist system installation and training. I will transfer the funds directly to the medical company's escrow account. You will never touch a cent of it." I slammed my hand down on the counter. "And this is the end. You get your money, you get your precious machine, but you will never again use me or my brother's condition as leverage. The moment that money clears, I am cutting you both off. No more visits, no more calls, no more financial support. You got what you wanted, you just lost your son and your insurance policy in the process." My father opened his mouth to protest, but my mother grabbed his arm, her face a mask of shame and victory. The victory was palpable. They got the money. 2 days later, the funds cleared. The paperwork was signed. The 6 figures vanished from my account, leaving a frightening hole in my security. A week later, I got a text. Not from my parents, but from Ethan. It was a short video. He was standing, shakily, in the robo-assist exoskeleton, looking down at his own feet. He didn't look triumphant. He looked utterly overwhelmed. His text simply read, "Thank you, James. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. I kept my promise. I didn't call, didn't visit, and I blocked their numbers. They got their machine, and Ethan got a chance at a different life. But the family I tried to save was gone, replaced by a devastating transaction. I now had my freedom, but it came at a price no court could calculate. Was it worth the cost? I stare at the empty space in my bank account and the empty space where my family used to be, and I still don't know the answer. I only know that when they pushed me to the brink, I chose my brother's legs over my own peace. And that, I suppose, is a debt I can live with.